At my 74th birthday party, there were 47 guests in attendance. Not a single one wished me happy birthday. Instead, my daughter turned my birthday celebration into her own product launch. And when I tried to speak, she looked at me and snapped, "Shut up, Dad," turning me into a laughingstock in front of everyone. So I walked into my office, opened a yellow folder marked Plan B, and made one phone call. Tomorrow that call would change everything, including a lesson for the betrayer. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you were at that birthday party, what would your Plan B be? Comment below. I'm curious how you'd handle betrayal. Quick note, this is fictional, exploring family conflict and self-respect. Any resemblance to real people or places is coincidental. Now about that phone call. I spent 42 years as an executive director in logistics. I learned early that every supply chain has a breaking point, the exact moment when a single missing component brings the entire system to a halt. I just never thought I'd become that component in my own family. It was a Friday evening in late August when I pulled into the circular driveway of my Port Royal home. The one Eleanor and I bought 30 years ago when the Gulf breeze still smelled like possibility instead of betrayal. The house was ablaze with lights. White valet tents lined the drive. A catering truck from Naples's most expensive service sat parked near the 6-car garage. Stephanie had told me she wanted to do something special for my 74th birthday. I pictured maybe 20 people, old friends from the country club, a few neighbors, Richard Clayton and his wife. The kind of quiet celebration Eleanor would have organized: good wine, better conversation, and a toast that actually meant something. I was wrong about all of it. The moment I stepped through the front door, I knew this wasn't my party. It was Stephanie's. 47 people I'd never met crowded my living room. They wore the kind of designer casual that screams, "I'm successful but approachable," linen blazers, statement jewelry shoes that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Nobody looked at me. They were too busy exchanging business cards, laughing too loudly at jokes that weren't funny, and posing for photos in front of a banner that read, "Serenity Wellness, Unlock Your Best Self." Not "Happy 74th Birthday, Dad." Not "Happy Birthday, Grandpa." Just Stephanie's logo, her brand, her network. I stood in my own entryway like a stranger at someone else's event. A waiter offered me champagne. I recognized him from the Naples Beach Club. He'd served me lunch 3 weeks ago. He didn't recognize me tonight. I was invisible. "William, there you are." Stephanie swept across the room in a white cocktail dress that probably cost $3,000. Her smile was wide and sharp, the kind she used in business meetings when she wanted something. She kissed the air 6 inches from my cheek. "I'm so glad you could make it," she said, as if I'd been invited to my own home. "Stephanie, what is this?" "It's your birthday party and a launch event. 2 birds, 1 stone. You don't mind, do you? I mean, you're always saying we should use this house more." She didn't wait for an answer. She never did. "Come on, I want you to meet some people. This is Vanessa Hartley. She's co-chairing the Naples Charity Gala with me next week. And this is Marcus. He runs a wellness retreat in Scottsdale." I stopped listening. I've spent enough years in boardrooms to recognize a sales pitch when I hear one. This wasn't a birthday party. This was a product demonstration. And I was the prop. By 8 o'clock, I'd retreated to the corner near the fireplace, nursing a scotch I'd poured myself, because the bartender didn't know where we kept the good bottles. I watched Stephanie work the room with the precision of a military campaign. Trevor stood beside her, hands in his pockets, nodding along like a well-trained assistant. Ethan sat on the couch, filming everything on his phone, probably uploading it to social media, with some caption about living my best life. None of them looked at me. Then Stephanie climbed onto the raised hearth and tapped a champagne flute with a silver spoon. The room fell silent. "Everyone, I just want to say a quick thank you for being here tonight to celebrate my father's birthday." A smattering of polite applause. She held up a hand. and to witness the official launch of Serenity Wellness. More applause. Louder this time. I wouldn't be here without the foundation my father provided. This house, this life, this opportunity, it's all because he worked hard and gave us everything. She turned toward me, glass raised. Dad, you've always been the spare part that keeps the machine running. You pay the bills. You keep the lights on. You make it possible for the rest of us to live our real lives. So here's to you the ultimate supporting role. The room erupted in laughter. Not kind laughter. Not affectionate. Just laughter. I tried to speak. Stephanie, I think we should... Shut up, Dad. She didn't even look at me. She kept smiling at her guests, glass still raised. We're celebrating. Trevor smirked. Ethan looked up from his phone long enough to grin. Vanessa Hartley whispered something to the woman next to her, and they both giggled. The room continued laughing. Nobody defended me. Nobody looked uncomfortable. They just went along with it. I set my glass down on the mantel. My hand didn't shake. 42 years as an executive director teaches you to keep your composure when a system fails. I walked through the crowd without saying a word. Nobody stopped me. I climbed the stairs to my study, closed the door, and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a yellow folder labeled Plan B. I'd created it 2 years ago after the third time Stephanie borrowed money without asking. After the fifth time, Trevor's business failed, and I quietly paid off his debts. After Ethan called me old man at Thanksgiving and nobody corrected him. Richard Clayton had helped me prepare it. We'd worked through every scenario, every contingency, every legal loophole. I picked up my phone and dialed. Richard, it's time. Are you sure? His voice was calm, professional. We'd rehearsed this moment. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Consider it done. I'll start phase 1 tonight. I hung up. I walked downstairs through the living room, where the party continued without me, and out the front door. The valet had parked my Lincoln Continental near the fountain, the one Eleanor and I installed when we first moved in. Back when we thought this house would be filled with grandchildren who actually loved us. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my house keys, and dropped them into the water. They sank without a sound. I got into the car, started the engine, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, the mansion blazed with light and laughter, and people who didn't know I existed. They didn't even know I was gone. The woman at the front desk smiled when I walked in at 9:30 Friday night. Mr. Foster, welcome back. We have your penthouse suite ready. She knew my name. She'd known it for 15 years every time Eleanor and I stayed here for our anniversary. After Eleanor passed, I stopped coming. Until tonight. The penthouse was exactly as I remembered. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Gulf. A king bed with sheets that cost more than most people's car payment. Heated marble floors. Everything spotless, elegant, and mine. I stood in the living room and exhaled. For 3 years, I'd been sleeping in the guest room of my own house. Stephanie took over the master suite 6 months after Eleanor died. You don't need all that space anymore, she'd said. I hadn't fought her. I'd let them push me into the margins of my own life 1 square foot at a time. Not anymore. I called room service without looking at prices. Wagyu burger medium rare. Truffle fries. A bottle of Chateau Margaux, 2015, $340. I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was spending money on myself. The food arrived on a silver cart. The waiter set it up on the balcony, poured the wine, and left with a quiet, enjoy your evening, sir. Shaktitida. I did. The Wagyu melted. The wine was worth every penny. The Gulf breeze was warm and clean. I sat for an hour eating slowly, watching the lights of Naples flicker along the shore. Eleanor would have loved this. She always said I needed to enjoy the money I'd earned, instead of handing it over to people who didn't deserve it. "You were right," I said to the empty chair. "You were always right." At 11, I opened my iPad. I'd installed security cameras throughout the house 2 years ago, good ones with cellular backup. Cutting power or Wi-Fi doesn't kill a properly configured system. The cameras kept recording uploading to a cloud server Stephanie and Trevor didn't know existed. I logged in. The party was winding down. Stephanie stood in the living room phone to her ear face tight with frustration. She was calling me. I watched my phone buzz. I didn't answer. Trevor walked through the garage, peering at the empty space where the Lincoln should have been. He typed something on his phone, shook his head. Ethan was still on the couch, scrolling through social media, oblivious. I watched for 20 minutes. Watched Stephanie's confusion turn to worry. Watched the catering staff pack up and leave. Then I closed the iPad and poured another glass of wine. At midnight, my phone rang. This time I answered. "Richard. How's the hotel? Better than expected." "Good. I'm starting phase 1. Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain." "Understood. Here's what happens tonight. I'm canceling all subsidiary cards, Stephanie's Amex, Trevor's Visa, Ethan's MasterCard. They stop working at 9 a.m. I'm flagging them as compromised with credit bureaus." "Good. I'm freezing joint accounts. Everything transfers into the irrevocable trust we set up. Stephanie has no legal claim." Utilities. Electric, water, internet, gas all shut off at noon tomorrow. I've authorized disconnections using your power of attorney. I smiled. Trevor's car. The Lexus has remote immobilization, already activated. He won't be able to start it. Eviction. Douglas Sinclair is preparing paperwork tonight. The life estate deed you signed 6 months ago gives you authority to terminate tenancy with 95 hours notice. We served them Tuesday at the charity gala. Maximum public impact. 42 years in logistics taught me timing is everything. You don't just cut off a supply chain, you dismantle it systematically until the whole system collapses. Anything else? Yes. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., you see Dr. Arthur Brennan, neurologist. He'll evaluate you and provide a notarized competency certificate. When Stephanie claims you're senile, we'll have proof otherwise. Perfect. That's why you pay me. I hung up. Outside, the Gulf was black and calm. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Control. At 10 Saturday morning, I sat in Dr. Brennan's office taking cognitive tests. Memory recall, problem solving, spatial reasoning. I answered everything correctly. He signed a notarized letter confirming I was of sound mind, fully competent, with no cognitive decline. "Your daughter may challenge this," he said, handing me the document, "but it'll hold up in court." "Thank you." I returned to the hotel and set the letter beside the yellow folder. At 9:15 Saturday morning, my phone buzzed with Richard's email. Phase 1 complete. Cards terminated 9 a.m. Utilities shut off noon. Vehicle immobilized. Eviction paperwork finalized. The game begins. I poured coffee and walked onto the balcony. Somewhere across Naples, Stephanie was about to discover her credit cards didn't work. Trevor would find his car dead, and in 3 hours, the power would cut in the middle of a Florida August heatwave. I raised my cup to the Gulf. The game had indeed begun. At 10:30 Saturday morning, I sat on the Ritz-Carlton balcony with my second cup of coffee and opened the iPad. The security camera feed loaded instantly 6 angles of my Port Royal house, all crystal clear, despite yesterday's utility cancellations. Cellular backup was worth every penny. Frank Anderson's white pickup truck pulled into the driveway right on schedule. He'd been doing my landscaping for 8 years every Saturday morning like clockwork. Good man. Fair prices. always on time. I watched him walk to the front door and ring the bell. Stephanie answered after the third ring. Even through the camera, I could see she looked rough. Hair uncombed, yesterday's makeup smeared. She was wearing the same white cocktail dress from last night, now wrinkled and stained, hung over clearly. The party had probably gone past midnight. Frank held up his clipboard. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I knew exactly what he was saying. $650 for the month. Same as always. Stephanie nodded, turned back inside, returned with her wallet. She pulled out her Amex black card, the one with no preset spending limit, the one she'd used yesterday to charge $7,500 for a party I didn't want. She handed it to Frank. He swiped it through the mobile reader attached to his phone. Declined. I smiled. Stephanie's face went from confused to annoyed. She said something to Frank, probably blaming the reader or the card company or sunspots. She pulled out her Visa. Frank swiped it. Declined. Now she looked worried. She dug through her wallet and produced the MasterCard, the emergency backup she kept for situations like this. Frank swiped it. Declined. I set down my coffee and leaned forward. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. Stephanie's face went white. She said something to Frank, gesturing frantically. He shook his head, calm but firm. No payment, no service. That's how business works. He walked back to his truck, loaded his mower and edger, and drove away. Stephanie stood in the doorway, staring at her wallet like it had betrayed her. Across the street, I noticed Mrs. Patterson watering her roses. She'd definitely seen the whole thing. By this afternoon, half of Port Royal would know that Stephanie Foster Mason's credit cards didn't work. Perfect. Stephanie pulled out her phone and started dialing. I watched my own phone buzz on the table. I let it ring. She tried again. I ignored it again. Third call. Fourth. Fifth. I turned the phone face down and took another sip of coffee. On screen, Trevor appeared in the hallway, barefoot, rubbing his eyes. Stephanie grabbed his arm, shoved her wallet in his face. He pulled out his own cards, handed them to her. She probably tried calling the banks next. I could see her pacing phone pressed to her ear, getting increasingly agitated. At 11:58 a.m., I set down my coffee and checked my watch. 2 minutes. On the iPad, everything looked normal. The house was quiet. Stephanie was still on the phone. Trevor had disappeared into the kitchen. Ethan was on the couch with his gaming console headset on, yelling at teammates in whatever online battle he was fighting. Noon. The lights flickered once, then died. The camera feed showed every lamp, every overhead fixture, every LED accent strip go dark simultaneously. The house went silent. No hum of air conditioning, no whir of ceiling fans, no background noise of electronics. Just dead air. Ethan's scream was so loud, I could almost hear it through the silent footage. His game console had shut off mid-match. His headset went dead. His carefully curated online reputation just took a hit because his connection dropped. Stephanie ran to the breaker panel in the garage. I watched her flip switches uselessly. She checked her phone, probably Googling power outage Port Royal Naples. She'd find nothing. This wasn't a grid failure. This was a service disconnection. Trevor joined her, equally confused. They stood there arguing. I could see the hand gestures, the finger pointing, the mounting frustration. Then Stephanie tried the kitchen faucet. Nothing. No water. Most people don't realize that well pumps need electricity. We weren't on city water. The house had a deep well with an electric pump. No power meant no water, no showers, no toilets, no drinking water. Within 15 minutes, the house started heating up. August in Florida is brutal, 95 degrees, outside humidity hovering around 80%. Without air conditioning, the temperature inside would climb fast. The house was all glass and marble designed to stay cool with modern HVAC. Without it, the place would become a greenhouse. Ethan emerged from his room shouting something. Stephanie shouted back. Trevor opened the sliding glass door to let in air, but that just brought in more heat and humidity. Ethan retreated to his room, probably trying to get Wi-Fi on his phone, not realizing the router was dead. No power, no water, no internet, no money. I watched them spiral. Stephanie tried calling me again, 18 missed calls now. Trevor started pacing. Ethan came back out demanding answers, throwing a teenage tantrum. They had no idea this was just the beginning. Trevor said something to Stephanie, gestured toward the garage. She nodded. He disappeared, presumably to grab his wallet and car keys. The Lexus GX was their escape route drive to a hotel, buy supplies, figure out what was happening. Good plan. Under normal circumstances. On the iPad feed, I watched Trevor stride confidently into the garage. He pressed the key fob. The Lexus's lights flashed once in acknowledgement. He opened the driver's door, slid into the seat, and pressed the start button. Nothing. He pressed it again. The dashboard lit up, but the engine didn't turn over. A message appeared on the screen: vehicle system fault. Contact dealer. Trevor's confident expression crumbled. I leaned back in my chair and finished my coffee. 42 years in logistics taught me that system failures are never isolated. One component fails and the whole chain collapses. Cut the power supply and everything downstream dies with it. On the iPad, Trevor climbed out of the Lexus, slammed the door, and kicked the tire. He pulled out his phone, probably searching for the nearest car rental place or Uber. He had no idea what was waiting. I watched Trevor slide into the Lexus and press the ignition button with casual confidence. The dashboard lit up, red, vehicle immobilized, theft alert, doors locked, contact dealer. Trevor stared, pressed again. Same message. He tried the door handle. Locked. The anti-theft system had activated exactly as Richard planned. When immobilization triggers, doors auto-lock to prevent theft, unless you're trapped inside. I pulled my chair closer to the iPad. Trevor tried the window switches. Nothing. Electric windows need the engine running. He pressed unlock repeatedly. The locks didn't budge. He pulled out his phone, probably Googling solutions. The August sun beat down on the black SUV in the enclosed garage. No air conditioning. No airflow. Just a sealed box with glass acting like a magnifier. I checked my watch. 12:17 p.m. By 12:22, Trevor had removed his shirt. Sweat poured down his face. He banged on windows, yelling for help. Stephanie was inside, couldn't hear him. By 12:27, his face was red, breathing labored. Phone signal kept dropping. He'd moved from problem-solving to panic. By 12:32, he was kicking the windows, desperate primal kicks against reinforced glass. By 12:37, he braced against the passenger seat and kicked with both feet. Once. Twice. 10 times. On the 15th kick, the glass spiderwebbed. On the 18th, it shattered. His right hand went through clearing glass. Blood immediately, a gash across his palm. He didn't care. He unlocked from outside and fell onto the garage floor. He lay there almost a minute, chest heaving, hand bleeding, surrounded by glass. Inside, that Lexus had probably hit 120 degrees. Eventually, he stood cradling his hand and stumbled inside. I switched cameras. Stephanie saw the blood and screamed. Trevor collapsed into a kitchen chair while she wrapped his hand with a dish towel. The cut looked deep. They argued. Trevor pointed at his hand, the garage. Stephanie paced, looking desperate. Then she stopped. Her expression changed. She'd thought of something. She picked up her phone and dialed. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, I need help. Stephanie's voice shook. My father is missing. He's 74 and has dementia. He didn't come home last night. I raised an eyebrow. Dementia. Creative. Ma'am, when was the last time you saw him? Yesterday evening, 7:30. He left during his birthday party and never came back. We've been calling all morning. Does your father have medical conditions? Yes. Her voice broke. He has a heart condition. He needs medication twice daily. If he doesn't get it soon... I opened the folder and pulled out Dr. Brennan's letter, notarized certificate confirming full cognitive competency and excellent cardiovascular health. No dementia, no heart condition, no medication. Stephanie was digging herself deeper. We'll send an officer for a missing person report, the dispatcher said. Can you check local hospitals and hotels? We've tried everything. Please, he could be confused wandering Naples in this heat. The dispatcher took details my name description car. She promised a silver alert. Suggested Stephanie leave voicemails. If he's having a cognitive episode, your voice might help. Thank you so much. Stephanie hung up and turned to Trevor. The police will find him and bring him home. Trevor nodded, holding his bleeding hand. They believed this would work. I closed the iPad and looked at the Gulf. 42 years managing supply chains taught me the best defense is redundancy. You don't just plan for success. You plan for every failure mode and build countermeasures before the system goes live. Dr. Brennan's letter sat before me legally bulletproof. Richard had sent copies to Naples police with a statement explaining I wasn't missing, not in danger, not cognitively impaired. That I'd voluntarily left and didn't wish contact. When police investigated, they'd already know it was a lie. Filing false missing person reports is first-degree misdemeanor in Florida. False statements about mental competency to manipulate law enforcement could escalate to felony charges, especially when part of a scheme to gain conservatorship or steal assets. Stephanie had just handed me another piece of evidence. I poured coffee and opened my laptop. Somewhere in Naples, an officer was typing a missing person report. By tonight, they'd realize they'd been lied to. By tomorrow, they'd ask Stephanie uncomfortable questions. Let them come. I was ready. The knock came at 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, firm professional, the kind that says official business. I set down my book and walked to the door of the Ritz-Carlton penthouse. Through the peephole, I saw 2 Naples police officers in uniform. I opened the door calmly. Mr. William Foster. That's correct. The older officer extended his hand. Sergeant Miller Naples, PD. This is Officer Ramirez. May we come in? Of course. I stepped aside and gestured toward the seating area. Can I offer you water coffee? No, thank you, sir. Sergeant Miller settled into one of the armchairs. Ramirez pulled out a notepad. We're here about a missing person report filed yesterday by your daughter Stephanie Foster Mason. I see. She reported that you left home Friday evening and haven't returned. She indicated you have dementia and require daily heart medication. She expressed concern for your safety. I nodded slowly, as if considering this. And what's your assessment? Sergeant Miller smiled slightly. Well, sir, you seem pretty articulate for someone who's supposed to be confused and wandering around Naples. I appreciate that. I walked to the desk and picked up the folder. I anticipated this conversation. Yesterday morning, I visited Dr. Arthur Brennan. He's a neurologist here in Naples. I asked him to conduct a full cognitive evaluation. I handed Miller the notarized letter. He read it carefully, then passed it to Ramirez. This is dated yesterday, Miller said. Saturday, August 26th. Correct. After my daughter called 911 on Saturday claiming I was missing and confused, I thought it prudent to get professional documentation of my mental state. Ramirez looked up from the letter. Sir, this says you scored in the 98th percentile on cognitive function tests. No signs of dementia, no memory issues, no cardiovascular problems. That's accurate. Sergeant Miller leaned back in his chair. Mr. Foster, are you here of your own free will? Absolutely. I left my residence Friday night because I chose to. I'm 74 years old, of sound mind, and under no obligation to inform my adult daughter of my whereabouts. Does she have power of attorney conservatorship? No, and she never will. Miller and Ramirez exchanged a look. I'd seen that look before in boardrooms, the moment when people realize they've been played. Mr. Foster, Miller said carefully, would you be willing to call your daughter on speakerphone? I think we need to clear up this misunderstanding. I'd be happy to. I pulled out my phone and dialed Stephanie's number. Put it on speaker. It rang twice before she answered. Dad, where are you? Are you okay? Her voice was frantic, almost convincing. I'm fine, Stephanie. I'm at the Ritz-Carlton with Sergeant Miller and Officer Ramirez from Naples PD. They're here about the missing person report you filed. Silence. Then, did you find him? Did you bring him home? Ma'am. Miller said, I'm Sergeant Miller. Your father is not missing. He's here voluntarily. He's coherent, articulate, and has provided medical documentation proving he doesn't have dementia or any heart condition requiring medication. That's not true. He's lying. He's been acting strange for months. He needs to come home right now. Ma'am, filing a false missing person report is a crime in Florida. It's a first-degree misdemeanor. I didn't file a false report. He is missing. He left without telling anyone Mr. Foster is a 74-year-old adult with full mental capacity. He has no legal obligation to tell you where he is. If you call 911 again with false information, you could face criminal charges. Do you understand? Do you understand, ma'am? A long pause, then quietly, yes. Thank you. Miller ended the call and handed me back my phone. Mr. Foster, I apologize for the inconvenience. We have to follow up on these reports, but it's clear there's no emergency here. I understand completely, Sergeant. You were doing your job. Miller stood. Ramirez followed. For what it's worth, sir, you might want to document everything. If your daughter continues making false claims about your mental health, you may need evidence to protect yourself legally. I appreciate the advice. After they left, I poured a glass of wine and returned to the balcony. The Gulf was gold and pink in the late afternoon sun. I felt lighter than I had in years. At 8:45 that evening, my phone buzzed with a text message. Long. Very long. I opened it. Stephanie, Dad. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this ends now. You're coming home tonight. I've already spoken to Dr. Andrew Morrison. He's willing to sign paperwork confirming cognitive decline. We can have you evaluated and placed under medical supervision at Shady Pines by Wednesday, if you don't cooperate. Trevor and I have consulted with an attorney. If you're not home by midnight, we're filing for emergency conservatorship on the grounds that you're a danger to yourself. You'll lose control of everything, the house, the accounts, all of it. This is your last chance. Come home. Now. I read it twice. Then I took a screenshot. Then another. I opened my email and forwarded both images to Richard Clayton with the subject line, Extortion, Evidence A. My phone rang 30 seconds later. William, this is gold. Richard's voice was almost gleeful. This isn't just extortion. This is conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted elder abuse, and possibly criminal threat. Dr. Morrison signing false medical documents would lose his license and face felony charges. She just threatened to illegally institutionalize you unless you comply with her demands. Do you know what that's called? Felony conspiracy. Exactly. With this text alone, I could get a restraining order, file criminal complaints, and have her investigated by Adult Protective Services. Do you want me to move forward? Not yet. I looked out at the dark gulf. Let her dig deeper. Document everything. Every text, every threat, every false claim. When we're ready, I want the folder to be so complete that no judge, no jury, no one could possibly side with her. You're building a case. I'm dismantling a system. 42 years in logistics taught me that if you want to eliminate a threat, you don't just cut it off. You document every failure point until the collapse is inevitable and complete. Understood. I'll keep the evidence file updated. And William, yes, sleep well. She just handed you a nuclear weapon. I hung up, deleted the text thread from my phone. The screenshots were backed up in 3 separate locations and went to bed. For the first time in years, I slept peacefully. At 2:30 Monday morning, my iPad chimed with a motion alert. I switched to the study camera infrared mode. Trevor, dressed in black, carrying a flashlight, moving like a man who'd lost everything. 72 hours without power had broken him. I could see it in the frantic way he moved. He entered my study and swept the flashlight across the walls. Then he stopped at the sailboat painting Eleanor and I bought in Charleston 20 years ago. He pulled it off the wall. Behind it was the wall safe. He tried the combination, right, left, right. The old code. The safe didn't open. I'd changed it 6 months ago when I started building the yellow folder. Richard's suggestion, if they're desperate enough to break in, make sure there's something waiting. Trevor tried again. Failed. His shoulders slumped. He left, returned 5 minutes later with tools from the garage. Crowbar, hammer, screwdriver. I leaned forward. He wedged the crowbar into the seam and pulled. The drywall cracked. He swung the hammer at the lock again and again. 45 minutes of destruction. The wall was ruined, the lock mangled. Finally, the door gave way. He shone his flashlight inside, one white envelope with his name in black ink. His hands shook as he opened it. He read once, then again. The letter fell from his hands. He sank to the floor, curled into a ball, and cried. I zoomed in and hit record. This goes in the folder. The letter was 3 sentences. Trevor, I know about the $350,000. The FBI has had evidence for 18 months. It's over. William, I didn't tell him the FBI investigation was real, that Richard had quietly filed reports after uncovering wire fraud. I didn't tell him agents were building a case. I just told him it was over. It was. He lay there 20 minutes before crawling out. I saved the video. By Monday morning, Stephanie had found him on the couch. I watched her shake him awake. Trevor showed her the letter or refused to explain. Either way, Stephanie's response was immediate. The gala would go on. I saw it in her face. That manic determination people get in freefall, she couldn't cancel. Not after announcing it to half of Naples. Not after sending invitations. Canceling meant admitting defeat. Stephanie Foster Mason did not admit defeat. By 10 o'clock, she was in the master bedroom, the one that used to be mine and Eleanor's, opening the jewelry box. Eleanor's jewelry. She pulled out pieces one by one. The pearl necklace from our 30th anniversary. The diamond earrings from our wedding. The gold bracelet Eleanor wore every Sunday. Something twisted in my chest. Not anger, something colder. Stephanie put them in a bag and drove to a pawn shop on Tamiami Trail. She returned with $3,000 cash. She'd sold her mother's jewelry to fund a product launch. I closed my eyes and thought about Eleanor. She would have cried. Then told me to forgive, to give them another chance. but Eleanor wasn't here. And I wasn't the same man. By noon, a truck arrived. Two men unloaded an industrial generator, massive diesel-powered, designed for construction sites. They set it on the front lawn because the garage still held Trevor's broken Lexus. The generator was enormous, visible from the street. Mrs. Patterson was definitely watching. Stephanie paid $800 for one-day signed papers, got a quick tutorial, sent them away. Then she called a budget catering company. $2,500 for basic trays, plastic plates, grocery store wine. A massive downgrade from the $7,500 spread 3 days ago. By evening, the front lawn looked like a disaster zone. Generator roaring, extension cords through an open window, diesel exhaust in the humid air. Stephanie stood in the driveway calling guests. "Shas, the power's back. The gala is still happening Tuesday at 6:30. She sounded confident, energized, in control. Inside, Trevor sat in darkness, staring at nothing. Stephanie walked through checking rooms, adjusting furniture, pretending the generator wasn't a billboard, announcing her desperation. She never checked the fuel gauge, never asked how long it would run, never thought past the next 24 hours. I closed the iPad and poured wine. 42 years in logistics taught me structural failures are gradual, then sudden. Foundations crack slowly and visibly. You don't notice until the building comes down. Stephanie was standing on a foundation that had been crumbling for 3 days. She just didn't know it yet. At 6:30 Tuesday evening, I sat on the Ritz-Carlton balcony with my iPad propped on the table. Richard Clayton sat across from me, scotch in hand, watching the screen over my shoulder. The first guests were arriving at my Port Royal house. Even through the camera feed, I could see their faces, the polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the way they hesitated at the driveway when they saw the industrial generator roaring on the front lawn like some kind of mechanical beast. It was loud. Even from here, I could imagine the noise, a deep, rattling growl that drowned out conversation. Diesel exhaust hung in the humid evening air. Orange extension cords snaked through an open window into the house, duct-taped to the siding. Mrs. Patterson stood on her front porch across the street, arms crossed, watching the spectacle. "This is painful to watch," Richard said quietly. "That's the point." The guests were dressed in cocktail attire, silk dresses, linen suits, expensive jewelry. Naples society in full form. They climbed out of their Mercedes and BMWs and stared at the generator like it was a dead animal someone had dragged onto the lawn. A woman in a silver dress leaned toward her husband and whispered something. He nodded, glanced at the house, then back at his watch. Calculating how long they'd need to stay before leaving wouldn't be rude. I switched camera angles to the interior. The house was hot. Not unbearable, but uncomfortable. Stephanie had set up box fans in every corner, but they just pushed the humid air around without cooling anything. The generator didn't have enough capacity to run the central HVAC system. It could power lights and fans, but not the heavy-duty air conditioning a Florida August demanded. Guests stood near the fans, fanning themselves with cocktail napkins. Sweat beaded on foreheads. Makeup started to run. Someone opened a window which just let in more heat, and the diesel smell from outside. The catering spread looked exactly like what it was cheap. Grocery store wine in plastic cups, cheese cubes on toothpicks, crackers and dip. Nothing like the elaborate display from Friday's party. I watched one woman pick up a plastic cup, examine it, and set it back down without drinking. Stephanie moved through the crowd, with manic energy, shaking hands, air-kissing cheeks, thrusting Serenity Wellness brochures into people's hands. She was talking too fast, smiling too wide, gesturing too much. Overcompensating. Have you tried our adaptogenic blend? It's life-changing. Let me tell you about our subscription model. People nodded politely and edged away. Body language doesn't lie. Arms crossed, leaning back, eyes darting toward exits. Phones checked repeatedly. Trevor stood in the corner near the bar, pouring himself a third glass of wine. He looked hollow, empty. He avoided eye contact with everyone, including Stephanie. Ethan sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone, earbuds in, not even pretending to engage. At 7 o'clock, the front door opened again. Vanessa Hartley. She stepped inside like she was walking onto a stage, blonde hair, perfectly styled white dress that probably cost $5,000, diamond bracelet catching the light. She looked around, took in the generator noise, the heat, the desperate atmosphere, and smiled. Stephanie, darling. Stephanie practically ran to her. Vanessa, I'm so glad you made it. They air-kissed the way wealthy women do. Vanessa's eyes swept the room with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent years climbing social ladders. I love what you've done with the space. Vanessa's voice was bright, encouraging. So, authentic. That was one word for it. Stephanie beamed, pulling Vanessa deeper into the room, introducing her to guests. Vanessa played her part perfectly, smiling, nodding, complimenting the rustic ambiance and creative problem-solving. Then I saw it. Vanessa's eyes found Trevor across the room, just for a second. A glance that lasted half a beat too long. Trevor looked back, held her gaze. Something passed between them. Recognition, familiarity. Something that didn't belong at a business event, between your wife's best friend and yourself. I zoomed in slightly. Vanessa moved through the crowd, greeting people, but her trajectory brought her closer to Trevor. Not directly, casually, but deliberate. Trevor shifted his position, turned slightly toward where she was heading. They didn't speak, didn't approach each other, just orbited. Aware of each other in a way that people who are genuinely platonic never are, Stephanie didn't notice. She was too busy pitching Serenity Wellness to a couple near the fireplace who looked like they were planning their escape route. Richard, I said quietly. I see it. Vanessa Hartley and Trevor Mason. I'll add it to the file. I switched camera angles again. Every angle confirmed it. Vanessa and Trevor kept finding each other across the room. Not obvious, but consistent. Richard leaned back in his chair. Ready? I checked the time. 7:14 p.m. Almost. Let her finish the toast. On screen, Stephanie climbed onto the raised hearth again, the same spot where she'd humiliated me 4 days ago. She tapped a champagne glass with a silver spoon. The room quieted more out of social obligation than genuine interest. Everyone. Stephanie's voice was bright, forced. Thank you so much for being here tonight despite the minor technical difficulties. As you know, I'm launching Serenity Wellness, and I believe this brand represents... Blue lights flashed through the windows. Stephanie froze mid-sentence. The sound of sirens cut through her speech like a knife through silk, drowning out the generator, drowning out everything. On the iPad screen, blue lights swept across the mansion's windows in slow, rhythmic pulses. The music cut off abruptly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Guests froze champagne glasses halfway to lips, heads turning toward the front door. 4 Naples police patrol cars sat in the circular driveway, light bars flashing. Behind them, 2 black SUVs with tinted windows. Richard leaned forward. Here we go. The knocking was loud, authoritative. 3 heavy strikes that echoed through the house. I watched Stephanie's face on the camera feed. Confusion first, then annoyance. She was still in hostess mode, still trying to salvage her event. She straightened her dress, forced a smile. and walked to the door. She opened it to 6 uniformed deputies and a man in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. Douglas Sinclair. "Good evening," Douglas said. His voice was calm, professional, the tone of a man who'd done this 100 times. "I'm Douglas Sinclair with Sinclair Properties. I'm here to execute a legal property transfer and deliver eviction notices to the current occupants." Stephanie's smile faltered. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. This is my father's house. We live here." "Not anymore." Douglas opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "May I come in? This will be easier if everyone can hear." Stephanie didn't move. One of the deputies stepped forward. "Ma'am, we have a lawful court order. You can let us in voluntarily, or we can proceed under authority of the Collier County Sheriff's Office." She stepped aside. Douglas walked past her into the living room, where 40 guests stood in various states of confusion and concern. The deputies followed, positioning themselves near the exits. Professional, practiced. Douglas set his briefcase on the coffee table and pulled out a document. "My name is Douglas Sinclair. 6 months ago, your father, William Foster, executed a legal instrument called a life estate deed. This document transferred full ownership of this property located at 4725 Gordon Drive, Port Royal, Naples, Florida, to Sinclair Properties, LLC." Stephanie laughed. It came out high-pitched, nervous. "That's not possible. This is my house. My father wouldn't, under the terms of the life estate deed." Douglas continued, ignoring her. "Mr. Foster retained only one right-life tenancy. That means he could continue living here until his death, at which point ownership would pass fully to Sinclair Properties. However, he flipped to another page. Clause 14, Section B includes what's known as a voluntary vacation provision." He read aloud, his voice clear and steady. "Should the life tenant voluntarily vacate the property for a continuous period exceeding 48 hours and surrender primary access defined as keys, security codes, or other entry mechanisms, full ownership transfers immediately to the grantor, and all remaining occupants shall be considered unlawful holdover tenants, subject to immediate eviction." The room was silent except for the generator roaring outside. Douglas reached into his briefcase and pulled out a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside were 3 keys on a ring. These keys were recovered from the fountain on this property's front lawn on Friday evening, August 25th, at approximately 8:15 p.m. They've been identified as the primary entry keys to this residence. Mr. Foster was recorded on security footage placing them there himself before leaving the property. He looked up at Stephanie. "Sir, it is now Tuesday, August 29th, 7:20 p.m. 95 hours have elapsed since Mr. Foster vacated the property and surrendered access. The voluntary vacation clause has been triggered. Ownership of this property transferred to Sinclair Properties as of Sunday morning at 8 a.m. I watched Stephanie's face go white. Actually white. Like the blood had drained out of her entirely. "This morning," Douglas continued, "I spoke personally with Mr. Foster. He confirmed his intention never to return to this property. He has signed a formal affidavit to that effect, notarized and filed with the Collier County Clerk of Courts." Trevor appeared behind Stephanie, his face slack with shock. Douglas closed the folder. "As of this moment, you, Stephanie Foster Mason, Trevor Mason, and Ethan Mason, are unlawful holdover occupants. You have no legal right to remain on these premises." The sheriff stepped forward, an older man with gray hair and the calm authority of someone who'd seen everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, addressing the guests. "Anyone who does not reside at this address must leave immediately. Those who do reside here have 30 minutes to collect essential personal items only. Clothing, medications, identification documents. Nothing else. Deputies will supervise to ensure compliance. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then chaos. Guests surged toward the door. A woman in a green dress dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. Someone knocked over a chair. Vanessa Hartley pushed past Stephanie without a word. Her perfect composure finally cracked. I watched them flee. 47 guests scrambling for the exits like the house was on fire. Some left purses behind. Coats. One man left his phone on the mantel. Within 5 minutes, the room was empty except for Stephanie, Trevor, Ethan, the deputies, and Douglas Sinclair. The generator outside kept roaring, indifferent to the collapse happening inside. Richard raised his scotch glass in a silent toast. I clinked my wine against it. On screen, Stephanie stood in the middle of her empty living room, surrounded by half-eaten appetizers and abandoned champagne glasses. Trevor had his hands on his head, staring at nothing. Ethan looked at his phone, probably trying to process how to explain this on social media. Douglas straightened his tie and looked directly at Stephanie. "Shari, there's one more thing you should know," he said calmly. Stephanie didn't respond. She was barely breathing. 3 months ago, you contacted Miranda Wells at Premier Realty Naples. You attempted to list this property for sale at $4.2 million. You presented forged documents claiming power of attorney over your father due to alleged dementia. Mrs. Wells became suspicious and contacted me to verify the title. Stephanie's eyes went wide. I informed your father's attorney, Richard Clayton, who documented the attempted fraud. That evidence has been included in the eviction file. Douglas closed his briefcase with a soft click. You tried to sell a house you didn't own using fake medical claims about a man who's perfectly healthy. I suggest you use your 30 minutes wisely. He turned and walked toward the door, leaving Stephanie frozen in the middle of the room. I leaned forward in my chair, wine forgotten. Richard sat beside me, perfectly still, watching the iPad screen with the focus of a surgeon. Douglas Sinclair adjusted his glasses and looked directly at Stephanie. Mrs. Mason, this isn't the first time someone has attempted to sell this property without authorization. Stephanie stared at him, still processing the eviction. What? May 15th, 3 months ago, you contacted Miranda Wells at Premier Realty Naples and attempted to list this property for $4.2 million. The color drained from Stephanie's face. Douglas pulled another document from his briefcase. You presented Ms. Wells with these. He held up papers. A power of attorney document allegedly signed by your father, a medical evaluation claiming he suffered from advanced dementia and required full-time care. You told Ms. Wells you had legal authority to sell the property on his behalf. That's not... Miss Wells became suspicious when she ran a title search and discovered the life estate deed. She contacted me as the legal owner to verify your authority. Douglas's voice remained calm, clinical. I informed your father's attorney, Richard Clayton, who documented the entire attempted fraud. Movement at the back of the room. The deputies parted, and Richard Clayton stepped forward. Stephanie's eyes went wide. It's you. Richard walked to the center of the room, briefcase in hand. I'd never seen him look more like the attorney who'd spent 40 years destroying opposing counsel in courtrooms. Mrs. Mason. Richard's voice carried across the silent room. The documents you presented to Ms. Wells were forgeries. The signature on the power of attorney doesn't match your father's handwriting. We had it analyzed by 3 separate forensic experts. The medical evaluation was fabricated. Dr. Morrison never conducted any such examination. He pulled out a thick folder. You've been planning this for months, attempting to have your father declared incompetent, forging legal documents, conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, elder abuse. These are felonies, Mrs. Mason. The remaining guests, maybe 10 people who hadn't fled during the eviction chaos, had their phones out, recording every word, every second. Then I saw 2 more men enter through the front door, dark suits, FBI badges on their belts. One of them walked straight to Trevor, who'd been standing frozen near the broken Lexus in the garage entrance. Trevor Mason. Trevor didn't move, didn't speak. Just slowly raised his hands. The agent pulled out handcuffs. Trevor Mason, you're under arrest for wire fraud and embezzlement. He snapped the cuffs on Trevor's wrists while his partner read from a document. You are charged with fraudulent wire transfers totaling $350,000 from the accounts of William Foster over a period of 18 months. These transfers were made without authorization and concealed through false business entities. Additionally, you are charged with transferring $87,000 of these embezzled funds to one Vanessa Hartley for personal use. The room went silent. $87,000. Vanessa Hartley. I watched Stephanie's head snap toward Vanessa so fast I thought her neck would break. Vanessa had been edging toward the door, trying to blend into the wall. Now she froze, face white as paper. What? Stephanie's voice was barely a whisper. The FBI agent continued reading. Wire transfers to Ms. Hartley's personal account were labeled as consulting fees, but forensic accounting reveals they funded personal expenses, including rent for an apartment at the Naples Grand Resort, jewelry purchases, and travel expenses for trips to Miami, the Bahamas, and you. Stephanie's scream cut through the agent's words like a chainsaw. You slept with my husband! Everything happened at once. Stephanie lunged across the room, not walking, not running, but launching herself like a missile. She grabbed Vanessa's hair with both hands and yanked. Vanessa screamed. They both went down hard, crashing into a side table. A lamp shattered. You bitch, you were my best friend. Stephanie was on top of Vanessa's hands, still tangled in blonde hair, screaming incoherently. Vanessa fought back, scratching, kicking, trying to break free. They rolled across the floor, knocking over chairs, sending plastic cups flying. 3 deputies rushed in. It took all 3 of them to pull Stephanie off. She kept screaming, kept reaching for Vanessa, even as they restrained her arms. My best friend, I trusted you. You came to my house, Ma'am, you need to calm down. 5 years. 5 years we were friends, you bitch! Vanessa scrambled backward on the floor, her perfect white dress torn at the shoulder, makeup running a long scratch down her cheek. She was crying, trying to speak, but nothing coherent came out. The FBI agents had Trevor by the arms, leading him toward the door. He walked with his head down, not looking at Stephanie, not looking at Vanessa, not looking at anything. Just empty. Guests filmed everything. Every scream. Every second of the fight. Every moment of the arrest. Tomorrow morning, this would be all over Naples' social media. By afternoon, it would be everywhere. On the iPad screen, I watched the deputies finally get Stephanie under control. They didn't arrest her yet, but they held her arms firmly. The sheriff said something to her in a low voice. She stopped screaming, just stood there gasping for breath, staring at the space where Vanessa had been. Vanessa had fled out the front door, limping, one heel broken, still crying. Trevor was already in the back of an FBI vehicle. Richard looked at me. That was necessary, I finished. On screen, the sheriff released Stephanie's arms. She collapsed onto the floor, not dramatically, just down, like her legs had given out. Her hair was a mess. Her makeup smeared from tears and sweat. She sat there on the marble floor of what used to be her living room, gasping for air, surrounded by broken furniture and plastic cups and the wreckage of her entire life. The sheriff looked down at her. Even through the silent camera feed, I could read his expression. Pity. Still here, I appreciate you. Drop a comment below. Do you think Stephanie deserves a second chance after everything? Or has she burned that bridge forever? I genuinely want to know where you stand. Before we continue, this story includes dramatized elements for narrative impact. If you'd rather not proceed with fictional storytelling, now's a good place to pause. Otherwise, let's see what comes next. The sheriff stood over Stephanie on the floor, waiting. She didn't move. Just lay there among the broken glass and plastic cups, breathing hard, staring at nothing. Ma'am, you need to stand up now. This is my house. Her voice was hoarse from screaming. This is my house. No, ma'am, it's not. You have 30 minutes to collect essential items, and then you need to leave the property. If you refuse, I'll have no choice but to arrest you for trespassing. She didn't move. The sheriff nodded to two deputies. They stepped forward, took her by the arms, and lifted. Stephanie went completely limp, the way a toddler does during a tantrum. Dead weight. The deputies had to practically carry her. She started screaming again. No, you can't do this. I live here. This is illegal. Her feet dragged across the marble floor, kicking uselessly. The deputies didn't react, just kept walking, professional and methodical, carrying her toward the front door. I noticed Ethan then. He was standing near the staircase, phone out, filming. Not helping his mother, not protesting, just documenting. His face was blank, detached, like he was watching someone else's crisis unfold on a screen. The deputies carried Stephanie through the foyer. Her yellow dress was twisted, one strap torn from the fight with Vanessa. Her hair hung in her face. She looked nothing like the polished woman who'd stood on the hearth an hour ago toasting to her future. Outside, the generator was still roaring, that grinding mechanical growl that had been the soundtrack to her desperation. Diesel exhaust hung thick in the humid night air. And the neighbors. At least 20 people stood on the sidewalk and driveways, on porches. Mrs. Patterson, the Hendersons, the couple from 3 houses down, all watching, many filming. The deputies set Stephanie on her feet at the edge of the driveway. She swayed unsteady. For a moment, I thought she might collapse again. Instead, she ran. Not away. Back toward the house. She made it maybe 10 feet before a deputy caught her arm. She jerked free, stumbled, and her heel caught on the edge of the brick walkway. She went down hard, falling sideways into the flower bed beside the front entrance. Mud. Wet soil. The automatic sprinklers had run that morning, and the earth was still damp. She landed face first, arms out in a bed of impatience and decorative gravel. I watched her try to push herself up. Her hands sank into the mud. Her yellow dress, the one she'd probably spent $3,000 on, was covered in dirt and wet soil. Mud streaked her face, her hair, her arms. She didn't get up, just lay there sobbing into the flower bed. The neighbors kept filming. Some shook their heads. A few walked away embarrassed for her, but most stayed phones out, capturing every second, movement on screen. Ethan emerged from the house carrying a backpack, just one bag. He walked past his mother without stopping, without speaking. A car pulled up at the curb, another teenager driving. Ethan climbed in. The car drove away. He didn't look back. Douglas Sinclair appeared on the front porch, briefcase in hand. He looked down at Stephanie in the mud, then at the deputies. "Your belongings will be placed at the curb on Friday morning," he said. His voice carried clearly in the sudden quiet. "You have until then to make arrangements for storage. After Friday, anything remaining becomes property of Sinclair Properties. Do not return to this address. If you do, you will be arrested for criminal trespass." He turned and walked back inside. The heavy oak door, the one Eleanor and I had custom ordered from a craftsman in Savannah 30 years ago, closed with a definitive thud that echoed across the yard. And then the generator coughed, sputtered, died. The sudden silence was startling. No more mechanical roar, no more diesel rumble, just quiet. Evening sounds, crickets, distant traffic, and Stephanie sobbing in the flower bed. She pushed herself up onto her knees, mud dripping from her hands, her dress, her face. She looked around at the neighbors filming at the deputies standing guard at the closed door. Then she looked up, directly at the security camera mounted above the porch. She knew it was there. She'd always known, and she knew I was watching. Her lips moved. Even without audio, I could read them. "Dad, help me." My finger hovered over the iPad screen. Richard sat perfectly still beside me, not speaking, not moving, letting me decide. I looked at Stephanie on the screen, covered in mud, broken, alone, begging. For one moment, just one, I felt something. Not quite pity, not quite guilt, but something. Then I remembered. "Shut up, Dad. We're celebrating. You've always been the spare part. The guest room exile, the jewelry sold, the fake power of attorney, the dementia lie, the 911 call, the extortion text. 3 years of being treated like furniture in my own home. 10 years before that of being slowly erased." I pressed the button on the screen, disconnect. The feed went black. I set the iPad on the table face down, stood up, walked to the balcony. The Gulf stretched out before me, dark and endless under a sky full of stars. The Ritz-Carlton was quiet tonight, a weeknight off-season, just the sound of waves on the beach below and the breeze moving through the palm trees. For the first time in a decade, I felt nothing pressing on my chest. No anxiety about tomorrow. No guilt about yesterday. No weight of obligation or duty or family expectations crushing down. Just air, space, freedom. I poured myself 2 fingers of scotch, the good bottle, the one I'd been saving, and raised it to the dark horizon. Richard joined me on the balcony. "How do you feel?" "Lighter," I said. "Like I've been carrying something heavy for so long, I forgot what it felt like to put it down." "Any regrets?" I thought about that. Really thought. Then I remembered 42 years of managing supply chains. Sometimes you have to cut a component loose. Not because you want to, but because the entire system will fail if you don't. "No," I said. "No regrets." We stood there in silence, drinking scotch, watching Naples sleep below us. "They'll try to find you," Richard said quietly. "Stephanie will. Maybe Trevor, once he's out on bail. They'll want to talk, to negotiate, to apologize maybe. Let them. And..." I looked at him. 3 days. Give it 3 days. Then they can find me." Richard nodded. "Where?" "Somewhere public. Somewhere they can't make a scene." I smiled. "Ocean Prime. Friday night, 7 o'clock. I'll be having dinner." "You're going to let them come?" "I'm going to let them try." I was halfway through an excellent lobster tail when I saw them through the window. It was 6 o'clock on Friday evening. Ocean Prime was starting to fill up couples in cocktail dresses and sport coats, business dinners winding down the soft murmur of money and manners. I'd chosen a corner table with a view of Fifth Avenue, ordered the lobster and a glass of Sancerre, and settled in to enjoy my first truly peaceful meal in years. Then they appeared on the sidewalk outside. Stephanie and Trevor looking through the windows, searching. They found me. Stephanie looked like she'd aged a decade in 3 days. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans I'd never seen her wear before. The polished Naples socialite was gone. This was someone who'd been sleeping in a Motel 6. Trevor was worse. Sweatpants, a faded polo shirt, and around his left ankle, clearly visible even from here, the black electronic monitor that tracked his every movement as a condition of his bail. They walked in. Didn't ask the hostess for a table, just headed straight for me. I took another bite of lobster. Buttery. Perfect. Stephanie reached my table first and dropped into the chair across from me without asking. Trevor took the seat beside her. The waiter approached, saw the situation, and wisely retreated. "Oh, you destroyed us." Stephanie's voice was raw, hoarse, like she'd been crying for days. Maybe she had. "We're homeless. Do you understand that, homeless? We're living in a Motel 6 off Tamiami Trail. Trevor can't work. I can't work. Ethan won't even talk to me. You did this." I set down my fork and dabbed my mouth with the napkin. "I did." Trevor leaned forward. "You called the FBI. You set me up. You've been planning this for months, haven't you? All of it, the deed, the cameras, everything." 2 years, I said. "Give or take." 2 years. Stephanie's voice cracked. "You've been plotting against your own family for 2 years. I've been documenting theft for 2 years. There's a difference. We're your family. Are you—" I picked up my wine glass. "Tell me, Stephanie, what's your son's name?" She blinked. "What? Your son, my grandson? What's his name? Justin. His name is Justin." I smiled, not kindly. "No, it's Ethan. His name is Ethan. You just called him Justin, your own son. And you got it wrong." Her face went red. "I misspoke. I'm exhausted. We've been sleeping in a motel. Ethan is 17 years old. You've had 17 years to learn his name, and you still can't get it right when you're asking me for help." Trevor put his hand on Stephanie's arm, turned to me. "Look, we get it. You're angry. You wanted to teach us a lesson. Fine. Lesson learned. Now fix it. Fix it. Drop the charges against me. The FBI says you're the primary witness. Without your testimony, the case falls apart. Buy back the house from Sinclair. Pay whatever he wants. We can all go back to how things were." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I reached down to my briefcase, pulled out a black leather ledger, 20 years old, worn at the edges, and set it on the table. "Open it," I said. Stephanie looked at Trevor. He shrugged. She opened the ledger. "Page 1, I said. "Your college education. University of Miami, 4 years. Tuition, housing, meals, books, spending money. $310,000. Stephanie flipped through pages, her eyes scanning the neat columns of numbers I'd kept for 2 decades. Page 10. Your wedding. The Ritz-Carlton Ballroom, 300 guests, full bar destination honeymoon in Bora Bora. $140,000. Dad. Page 15. The first of Trevor's failed businesses, a coffee shop that lasted 9 months. I paid off the lease and the suppliers when it went under. $62,000. I reached across and flipped ahead. Page 50. Ethan's private school tuition. Kindergarten through his current senior year. $420,000. We were building a life. Keep going. She turned pages. More numbers. More expenses. Cars I'd bought. trips I'd paid for, medical bills I'd covered, every failed business venture. Every time Trevor borrowed money and never paid it back. Every time Stephanie's credit cards were maxed out and I quietly paid them off. The final page had one number circled in red ink. $6,800,000, $6.8 million. I let the number hang in the air. That's what I've spent on you in 20 years. That's the price tag on your love for me. That's not fair. Isn't it? I closed the ledger. I gave you everything. Education, weddings, a home, a grandson's entire childhood. I funded every dream, every failure, every whim. And what did I get in return? Silence. Shut up, Dad. We're celebrating. I quoted her own words back to her. You're just the spare part. Stephanie's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean, yes, you did. I stood up. Trevor, you asked if I could afford it. The answer is yes. I can afford $6.8 million. I'm a wealthy man. But here's what you don't understand. I pulled out my wallet and left a $100 bill on the table for the waiter. It's not about whether I can afford it. It's about return on investment. I invested $6.8 million in you, in this family. The return on that investment is zero. Actually, it's negative, because not only did I get nothing back, I lost my dignity, my peace of mind, and 3 years of being treated like furniture in my own home. Where are you going? Stephanie stood up, voice breaking. Dad, please. Paris. I picked up my briefcase. Your mother always wanted to go to Paris. We talked about it for 30 years. Never went. Too busy working. Too busy paying for your life. I looked at both of them. Really looked. Stephanie with tears running down her face. Trevor with his ankle monitor and his empty eyes. Consider the $6.8 million your severance package. I bought my freedom. The ledger is balanced. We're done. I walked toward the exit. Dad. Stephanie's voice echoed through the restaurant. People turned to stare. You can't just leave, we're your family. I kept walking. I'm your daughter. I pushed open the door. The warm Naples evening air hit my face. Palm trees swayed in the breeze. The Gulf was 2 blocks away, and I could smell the salt. Behind me, Stephanie was still screaming. I couldn't make out the words anymore. Didn't need to. I'd spent 42 years managing supply chains. I knew when a system had failed beyond repair. You don't throw good money after bad. You don't invest in components that only take and never give. You cut your losses. You move on. You build something new. I walked to my car without looking back. The ledger was balanced. At 7:30 Friday evening, my car pulled through the security gate at Naples Airport's private terminal. The Gulfstream G650 sat on the tarmac engines, humming softly stairs, extended cabin lights glowing warm against the darkening sky. 3 men stood at the base of the stairs. Arthur Whitmore, Samuel Richardson, and Walter Williams, my investment club. My poker buddies for 20 years, the men who'd sat with me through Eleanor's funeral and never once asked me for money. Arthur saw me first. He was 76, silver-haired, retired from banking. He grinned and walked forward as I climbed out of the car. You did it. He shook my hand, then pulled me into a hug. We were worried you'd soften at the last minute. Not this time. I returned the embrace. The baggage has been unloaded. Damn right it has. Samuel clapped me on the shoulder. He was 72, former federal judge, still sharp as a blade. We've been waiting 30 years for you to cut that anchor loose." Walter said nothing, just smiled and handed me a glass of champagne. That was Walter's way, quiet, thoughtful, always knowing exactly what was needed. We stood there for a moment, the four of us in the humid Florida evening, drinking champagne on a private runway, like we were kings. In a way, we were. Not because of money, because we'd earned our freedom. I climbed the stairs and stepped into the cabin. Cream leather seats, mahogany conference table, a bar stocked with scotch older than some countries. The kind of jet that costs more per hour than most people make in a year. But I'd spent 42 years working, earning, saving, and tonight I was finally spending it on something that mattered. Arthur settled into the seat across from me. Samuel and Walter took the chairs by the window. The flight attendant, a professional woman named Claire, who'd worked this route for years, appeared with a tray of glasses. Samuel raised his champagne. "To the bravest man I know, who finally learned that courage isn't staying, it's leaving." We drank. The champagne was excellent Dom Perignon 2008, the kind Eleanor and I used to save for special occasions that never seemed to come. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out something I'd been carrying for 3 days. Eleanor's world map. We'd bought it 40 years ago at an antique shop in Charleston back when we were young, and Naples was still affordable, and the whole world felt possible. The paper was yellowed, now creased from decades of being unfolded and refolded. But there, circled in red ink in Eleanor's careful handwriting, was Paris. "Someday, my love." That's all she'd written. Someday. But someday never came. There was always something more important. Stephanie's college tuition, Trevor's failed coffee shop, Ethan's private school, the house payment, the car payment, the endless grinding machinery of other people's lives consuming ours. Arthur leaned forward, studying the map. She always wanted to go, didn't she? 30 years we talked about it. Never went. Too busy working. Too busy paying for everyone else's dreams. "Well," Walter smiled, "you're going now." The plane began to taxi. The engines deepened to a roar. Through the window, I could see the lights of Naples, the city that had been my home, my prison, my battleground for so long. I thought about something I'd read once years ago, a phrase that people always got wrong. "Blood is thicker than water." That's not the full quote. The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means the bonds you choose, the promises you make, the people you stand beside by choice, are stronger than the bonds you're born into. Stephanie was my blood, my daughter, the water of the womb, and she'd brought me nothing but pain, obligation, and slow suffocation. Richard Clayton was not my blood. Neither were Arthur, Samuel, or Walter, but they'd stood beside me, fought for me, celebrated with me, asked for nothing and given everything. That was family. Not genetics, not obligation. Choice. The wheels left the ground. The plane lifted, banking east over the Gulf. Below us, Naples spread out like a map of its own, the grid of streets, the curve of coastline, the tiny squares of mansions in Port Royal. I found my house easily, the one Eleanor and I had bought 3 decades ago, the one I'd just given away without a second thought. From up here, it looked like nothing. A toy, a speck, somewhere down there. Stephanie was probably sitting in a Motel 6 room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how her life had collapsed so completely. Somewhere down there, Trevor was in a federal detention center waiting for his trial. The ankle monitor replaced with something far less comfortable. Somewhere down there, Ethan was making choices. Maybe good ones, maybe bad ones, but his own. I felt nothing for them. No anger, no satisfaction, no regret, no guilt, just air, space, the absence of weight. Arthur refilled my glass. So what's the first thing you'll do when you get to Paris? I looked down at Eleanor's map, at her handwriting, at the red circle she'd drawn 40 years ago around a city she never got to see. Père Lachaise Cemetery, I said. Eleanor always wanted to see Oscar Wilde's grave. She loved his writing. We were going to go together when I retired. But retirement kept getting delayed because there was always another expense, another crisis, another person who needed something. And after the cemetery, I folded the map carefully the way Eleanor used to. Then I'm going to live. For the first time in 10 years, maybe longer, I'm going to just live. Wake up when I want, eat when I'm hungry, walk through Paris with no destination in mind, read books, drink wine, talk to strangers, exist without purpose or obligation or duty. Samuel smiled. That sounds like the best retirement plan I've ever heard. The plane climbed higher. The lights of Naples disappeared behind clouds. Ahead of us was only darkness and the faint promise of dawn somewhere over the Atlantic. I sat back in the leather seat and closed my eyes. 42 years I'd managed supply chains, built systems, optimized processes, made sure everything ran smoothly, efficiently, without disruption. Now, for the first time since Eleanor died, maybe for the first time ever, I had no system to manage, no process to optimize, no crisis to solve, just sky and time and Paris waiting on the other side. As we leveled out at 38,000 feet, flying east through clouds toward a city I'd never seen, I thought I'd finally left everything behind. The house, the family, the obligation, the pain. All of it I thought was finally over. But the past has a way of catching up to you, sometimes in the places you least expect, and sometimes that's not a bad thing. 4 months after leaving Naples, I sat in a Paris cafe reading emails. One from Richard Clayton stopped me cold. Subject, your grandson. William Ethan has come to my office 6 times. I've turned him away per your instructions. But he's different now. Working at McDonald's, community college, volunteering at Naples Senior Center twice weekly. Saved $1,200, calls it restitution. He's not asking for money or help, just wants to apologize. Says he doesn't expect forgiveness. I've seen plenty of con artists. This doesn't feel like one. Thought you should know. Richard. I read it 3 times. Was it real or sophisticated manipulation? I'd planned a December trip to the States anyway. I could route through Naples, see for myself. I didn't tell Richard I was coming, didn't tell Ethan. If it was genuine, he'd wait. On a December afternoon, I walked Naples Pier at sunset, Eleanor's favorite spot. Halfway down, I heard a voice. Grandpa. I turned. Ethan stood 20 feet away, trembling. He looked different. Thinner hair, cut short McDonald's uniform under a clean jacket. I said nothing. Didn't move toward him or away. Just waited. I've been coming here every afternoon for 2 weeks, he said. Carmen told me you and Grandma used to walk here. I thought maybe... Carmen. Eleanor's loyal housekeeper. Of course she remembered. I stayed silent. I know you don't want to see me. I know I don't deserve it. His voice cracked. But I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I crossed my arms. I was 17. Not 7. I knew right from wrong. I made choices. I chose to be cruel because it was easier than standing up to Mom and Trevor. I chose to ignore you because everyone else did. I chose to laugh when you were humiliated. He wiped his eyes. You gave us everything. college savings, house food opportunities I never appreciated, and I treated you like you didn't exist, like you were furniture. The word stung. Eleanor had used it once. You've become furniture in your own home. I don't expect forgiveness, Ethan continued. I'm not asking for money or help. I just needed to tell you I'm sorry, face to face. I let silence stretch, watching for cracks in the performance. They didn't come. What changed you? I asked. He looked surprised I'd spoken. Everything. Eviction, Motel 6, bullying at school, working just to eat. But mostly, he paused. There's this man at the senior center, Mr. Patterson, 80 years old. His kids don't visit, don't call. He sits waiting every day for someone who never comes. Ethan's voice dropped. He told me he gave his kids everything: college, weddings, help with grandkids. Now he's alone. He said, I gave them everything, and now I have no one. He met my eyes. I realized I helped do that to you. I took everything and gave nothing back. If I kept going that way someday, I'd be the old man sitting alone wondering why nobody cared. I studied him, hands shaking, eyes steady despite the fear, looking for flaws in the system. I couldn't find them. Eleanor believed people could change, I said. She believed in second chances. Hope flickered across his face. I'm not Eleanor. I'm not ready to welcome you back like nothing happened. I'm not ready to trust you or forget. Hope dimmed. But I'm willing to start with coffee. Once a month. 1 hour. I see if this is real or performance. You show me with actions, not words, that you've changed. His eyes went wide. You'd really do that? One condition. You work to earn it every month. You prove it. Don't miss appointments. Don't ask for money. Don't expect anything except the chance to show me you're not who you were. I will, he said fiercely. I promise. Don't promise. Just do it. Promises are easy. Actions matter. He nodded. Thank you. I know I don't deserve this chance. You don't. But Eleanor would have given it. So I will. We stood separated by years of pain, connected by the thinnest thread of possibility. First coffee is January. Third Saturday, 10 a.m. The cafe on 5th Avenue across from the park. I'll find it. Don't be late. I won't. I turned and walked away. No hug, no handshake. Just walked. At the pier's end, I looked back once. Ethan still stood there watching. Then he turned toward the parking lot, toward his life, toward whatever future he was building. I didn't know if it would last. Didn't know if this was real change or temporary desperation. Didn't know if in 6 months he'd revert to the entitled kid who filmed his grandfather's humiliation. But I'd given him a chance to try. Time would tell if he earned it. In January, on the third Saturday at 10 in the morning, I sat across from Ethan at a small cafe on 5th Avenue, the one with the iron tables overlooking the park. He arrived 5 minutes early, ordered black coffee, and slid his community college report card across the table without a word. All A's and 2 B's. I studied it, then studied him. He didn't flinch. Yeah, business major, I said. With a logistics minor. He met my eyes. I want to learn what you knew. I felt something shift, but I didn't let it show. By March, he'd been promoted to shift supervisor at McDonald's. He told me about the promotion over our monthly coffee, his voice steady, proud, but not boastful. He still wore the uniform under his jacket. He never asked for money. When May arrived, we started meeting twice a month. One Saturday morning, he asked if I'd come with him to Naples Senior Center. I followed him inside, and there playing checkers with a frail man in a wheelchair was Ethan. The man's name was Mr. Patterson, 80 years old. No family visited him anymore. I volunteer here 10 hours a week, Ethan said quietly. Mr. Patterson reminds me of you, what I almost let happen. I watched them play. Mr. Patterson laughed at something Ethan said. I didn't speak, but I stayed for an hour. In June, Ethan mentioned needing textbooks for summer classes. I offered to pay. He shook his head. I'll pay you back when I'm able, he said. Not before. I nodded. The boundary held. When his 18th birthday came in July, I took him to Ocean Prime, the same restaurant where Stephanie and Trevor had confronted me a year earlier. This time the conversation was easy, natural. He told me about his classes, his goals, his girlfriend Sarah. I listened. For the first time, I didn't test him. I just listened. In August, he graduated with his associate's degree. I sat in the back row of the auditorium as he walked across the stage valedictorian. His speech was short. Self-respect isn't given. It's earned, one choice at a time. Afterward, in the parking lot, he hugged me. The first time, I hugged him back. He introduced me to Sarah a week later. She was quiet, kind, studying nursing. She shook my hand and said, "He talks about you all the time." In September, Ethan showed me a photograph. Eleanor, 20 years younger, standing on Naples Pier at sunset, the same pier where we'd met a year ago. "Carmen helped me find it," he said. "I thought you'd want it." I stared at the photo. My wife's smile, her eyes. I couldn't speak. "Merry Christmas," he said, though it was still September. Early. By October, he'd been accepted to the University of Florida's business school with a partial scholarship. He'd earned it. When he told me, I said the words I hadn't said in decades. "I'm proud of you," he cried. So did I. In November, Sarah came to dinner with us. Ethan talked about his plans: graduate in 3 years, work in supply chain management, maybe start his own company. He glanced at me when he said it. I smiled. At Christmas, he gave me a framed photo of Eleanor, the one from the pier. On the back, he'd written, "To Grandpa, thank you for the second chance. Ethan." I hung it in my Paris apartment next to Eleanor's map. Throughout those 12 months, Stephanie remained at the Motel 6. She'd found work at a Target on Airport Road. Trevor was serving a 15-year federal sentence. She attended therapy every week per court order. And every Sunday, she visited Eleanor's grave. I didn't know this until December, when I returned to Naples for the holidays. I went to the cemetery one afternoon, carrying white roses. Eleanor's headstone was clean, and at the base, fresh sunflowers. A card handwritten, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm trying. Stephanie." I stood there for a long time. Then I placed my roses beside hers. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness, not yet. But 2 years later, I would meet Stephanie at that same cafe on 5th Avenue. That, however, is another story. If Ethan's transformation moved, you drop a comment. Do you believe people can truly change, or is redemption just a fantasy? I'd love to hear your take on second chances. Friendly reminder. This story weaves fictional elements with real emotional themes. If fictional narratives aren't your thing, you're free to stop here. But there's still more to William's journey. I returned to Paris on a Tuesday morning in late September, 2 years after I'd walked out of that Port Royal mansion for the last time. My apartment was in the Latin Quarter, a 4th-floor walk-up, with tall windows and a narrow balcony that overlooked the Seine. Directly across the river, Notre Dame Cathedral stood wrapped in scaffolding, her stone bones slowly healing from the fire. Every morning, I watched construction crews move like ants across her frame, rebuilding what had been lost. It was a reminder I needed. I sat on that balcony every morning at 7:30 with black coffee and a white ceramic cup, a croissant from Boulangerie Laurent downstairs, and a copy of Le Monde folded beside me. The routine was simple, deliberate, mine. No one demanded my presence at breakfast. No one interrupted to ask for money. No one treated the table like a transaction. For 42 years, I had managed supply chains, optimized logistics networks, eliminated inefficiencies. I had spent a decade trying to apply that same discipline to a family that saw me as inventory, not a person. Here in Paris, I had finally optimized my life. I had eliminated the inefficiency of resentment. The city moved below me, cyclists, tourists, students heading to the Sorbonne. I sipped my coffee and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. At 9:30, my phone rang. Arthur. Dinner tonight. His voice carried the clipped precision of a man who'd spent 30 years practicing law in London before retiring to Paris. Le Comptoir Samuel located a 1945 Bordeaux. He won't say how. I'll be there, I said. 7 o'clock. Walter's flying back from Barcelona this afternoon. He'll have stories. He always does. This was our rhythm. The investment club we called ourselves, though we rarely discussed investments. We met twice a week, sometimes 3 at various restaurants across the 6th arrondissement. We ate well, we drank better, we never kept score. Le comptoir du Relais occupies a corner en carrefour de l'Odéon tucked between a bookshop that smells of old paper and a cheese vendor whose camembert can stop traffic. At 7 o'clock that evening, I arrived to find Arthur already seated at our usual table near the window, reading a biography of Churchill. He looked up, smiled, and stood to shake my hand. William, prompt as always. Logistics, I said. Old habits. Samuel arrived 3 minutes later carrying a wooden wine box under one arm like a newborn. He was 72, silver-haired, with the easy confidence of a man who'd raised 3 children into good adults and knew it. He set the box on the table with ceremony. Chateau Margaux, 1945, Victory Vintage. Arthur whistled low. How much did that cost? My dignity and a favor to a sommelier in Bordeaux. Samuel grinned. Worth every centime. Walter appeared last, pulling off a wool scarf and dropping into his chair with a satisfied sigh. He was 68, lean-weathered from decades of solo travel. Never married. No regrets. Barcelona was magnificent, he announced. Gaudí, tapas. A woman named Pilar, who taught me to dance sardana in the plaza. Did you keep her number? Samuel asked. I kept the memory. We ordered without menus, coq au vin for me, duck confit for Arthur, bouillabaisse for Samuel, ratatouille for Walter. The waiter knew us. We tipped well. Samuel opened the Bordeaux with the reverence it deserved. 78 years old. The bottle, not Samuel. To those who survived the war, Samuel said, raising his glass, and to those who made it possible. We drank. The conversation drifted through familiar territory: books, music, politics, art. Arthur had just returned from Vienna, where he'd spent 3 days at the Kunsthistorisches Museum studying Bruegel. Samuel described his 6 grandchildren, 2 in university, 4 still in school, all thriving. Walter talked about hiking alone through the Pyrenees, sleeping under stars, eating bread and cheese for a week. Sounds lonely, Arthur said. Sounds perfect, Walter replied. No one asked me for money. No one questioned my decision to leave my family. No one treated me like a resource to be managed or an ATM to be accessed. We simply existed together. Arthur understood grief. His wife Margaret had died of Alzheimer's 5 years earlier, He'd watched her fade, slowly losing language, then recognition, then herself. He'd rebuilt his life here in Paris, among friends who didn't need him to be anything other than present. Samuel had built something different, a family that functioned. He spoke of his children with genuine pride, not obligation. They called him twice a week. They visited. They paid their own bills. They contributed. Walter had chosen a different path entirely: solitude, freedom. He traveled, painted watercolors that no one but us would ever see, wrote poetry he never intended to publish. He was content. I thought about the decade I'd spent in that mansion in Port Royal, the endless demands, the transactional conversations, the absence of peace. Stephanie had called me a spare part. Trevor had stolen from me. Ethan had filmed my humiliation. And then I thought about these 2 years in Paris, these dinners, these men. No one here owed me anything. No one here took anything. I had paid $6.8 million to learn what family wasn't. These men taught me what it was. Family isn't blood. It's choice. At 9:30, as the restaurant emptied and the candles burned low, Arthur raised his glass. "To William," he said. 2 years of freedom. Samuel joined him. To second chapters. The best stories are always written last. Walter smiled. To self-respect. Never negotiated away. I raised my glass and met their eyes. To all of you, I said quietly. My real family. We paid the bill, split evenly as always, and walked out into the cool September night. Our apartments were within 3 blocks of each other. We walked together to the first intersection, said our quiet goodnights, and parted. I continued alone down Rue de Seine toward Pont Neuf. Hands in my pockets, the cobblestones slick with evening mist. My phone buzzed. An email. From Ethan. Grandpa, I got it. Full scholarship to UF Dean's List my first semester. Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. I won't let you down. Ethan. I stopped in the middle of the bridge. The Seine flowed dark beneath me, the city lights shimmering on the water like scattered coins. I stood there for a long moment, then typed my reply. You earned every bit of it yourself, proud of the man you're becoming. Grandpa. I sent it and slipped the phone back into my pocket. One person saved, one grandson redeemed. Maybe that was enough. I walked on through the Parisian streets, the Latin Quarter quiet around me, and felt something I hadn't felt in decades: satisfaction. Eleanor used to say, family isn't the people you're born to, William. It's the people who show up for you. She was right. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. The morning light came through the tall windows of my Paris apartment, in pale gold bars falling across the mahogany desk where I kept my leather journal. It was November now, 2 years and 3 months, since I'd thrown those keys into the fountain and walked away from the only house I'd owned for 23 years. I opened the journal to a fresh page and wrote the date, November 14th, 2026. Then I wrote, 2 years since I threw the keys into the fountain. Do I regret it? No. Below that, I began a list, 10 lessons learned. The kind that cost me $6.8 million and a decade of my life to understand. 1, respect must be earned daily, not inherited. Being a father didn't make me worthy of respect. Being present, honest, and generous should have. They treated the title like it entitled them to everything. It didn't. 2, generosity without boundaries is enabling. I thought I was being a good father by paying for everything. I was teaching them that I was an ATM, not a person. The moment I stopped dispensing, I became worthless to them. 3, blood doesn't obligate you to endure abuse. Stephanie, Trevor, Ethan, they shared my DNA. That didn't give them the right to humiliate me, steal from me, or treat me like furniture. Family is supposed to be a sanctuary, not a hostage situation. 4. The most expensive thing I ever bought was the illusion that I was needed. I wasn't needed. I was used. There's a difference. One is love. The other is extraction. 5. Self-respect is non-negotiable, especially with family. The people closest to you will test your boundaries the hardest. If you compromise your dignity to keep the peace, you'll lose both. 6. Loneliness is not the worst fate. Disrespect is. I spent a decade surrounded by people and felt more alone than I ever have in Paris, where I live by myself. Solitude with dignity beats company with contempt. 7. Real family chooses you. It's not obligated. Arthur Samuel Walter, they show up because they want to, not because they're stuck with me. That's the difference between blood and bond. 8. Walking away is not abandonment. It's choosing yourself. I didn't abandon Stephanie Trevor or Ethan. I stopped letting them abandon me while I funded their lives. 9. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's how you lived. I won't be remembered for the money I spent or the house I owned. I'll be remembered by the people who matter for the choices I made at 74 when it would have been easier to stay. 10. Freedom tastes better than any inheritance. I gave up the mansion, the legacy, the continuity. In return, I got my life back. Best trade I ever made. I turned the page and wrote a letter I'd never send. Dear Eleanor, I made it to Paris. It took 74 years and losing everything, but I made it. I went to Père Lachaise yesterday, Oscar Wilde's grave, just like you wanted. I left white roses from both of us. Someone had covered the tomb in lipstick kisses, hundreds of them red and pink, from visitors who believed in his kind of love. The reckless, uncompromising kind. You would have loved it. You'd be disappointed in Stephanie. I know you held out hope longer than I did, but you'd be proud of Ethan. He turned himself around. Full scholarship to the University of Florida, Dean's List. He calls me Grandpa now. He says, I love you. It's real this time. Arthur and the others remind me of us, what we had before things went wrong. They're genuine. They don't need anything from me except my company. It's a strange, wonderful thing. I miss you every single day. But I'm not dying anymore, Eleanor. I'm living again. Thank you for teaching me about second chances, even when I didn't take them. Love, William. I closed the journal and set it aside. My office was small, but mine floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, maps of places I'd been, and places I still wanted to go, photographs in simple black frames. Eleanor's wedding photo sat on the desk, her smile bright and young and full of hope. Beside it, newer photos, Ethan in his graduation cap holding his associate's degree. The four of us at a cafe in Vienna, Arthur, Samuel, Walter, and me, all laughing at something Walter had said. Carmen's daughter's 3rd birthday party. The little girl covered in frosting. Carmen's eyes warm with the kind of happiness I'd once thought was ordinary. A life rebuilt. Different, but real. My laptop chimed. A video call. Ethan. I clicked accept, and his face filled the screen, 18 years old, bright-eyed, standing in a cramped dorm room with cinder-block walls and a bunk bed behind him. Grandpa, check it out, this is my dorm. He spun the laptop around, showing me the small space, a desk cluttered with textbooks, a mini fridge covered in university stickers, a roommate waving from the top bunk. It's tiny, but it's mine. I earned it. I smiled. It's perfect, Ethan. You earned every square foot of it. He beamed. We talked for 20 minutes about his business classes, his professors, his new friends, his plans to join the logistics club on campus. The conversation was easy, natural, warm, no tension, no demands. just a grandfather and his grandson talking about life. "I gotta run," he said finally. "Study group in 10 minutes. Go. Work hard." He hesitated, then said it. "I love you, Grandpa." I felt something catch in my chest. The first time he'd said it and meant it. "I love you, son." He grinned and hung up. I sat back in my chair and looked out the window. The Paris skyline stretched before me in the fading afternoon light, rooftops and chimney pots, the Eiffel Tower barely visible through the November haze. Somewhere out there, the Seine flowed on, indifferent and eternal. I had learned something in these 2 years. The ending of one life is just the beginning of another, and sometimes the second one is better. If you've listened to my story this far, perhaps something in it resonated with you. Perhaps you saw yourself in that guest room in Port Royal, or in that chair at the birthday party where I was called a spare part in front of 47 people who said nothing. Perhaps you felt the weight of being needed only for what you provide, not for who you are. I want to tell you something. You're not alone. To the parents who pay for everything and receive nothing but demands in return, your value is not measured by your wallet. You are not an ATM. You are not a retirement plan. You are a person who deserves respect, gratitude, and basic human decency. If your children only call when they need money, they don't love you. They love your resources. To the elders treated like guests in homes you built, paid for, and earned, that house is yours. Those sacrifices were yours. The years of work, the missed vacations, the delayed dreams, all yours. Being old doesn't make you obsolete. It makes you experienced. And anyone who treats you like furniture is telling you exactly how much they value experience. To anyone who has ever been called a spare part or made to feel disposable, you are not a thing to be discarded when you stop being useful. You are not inventory. You are not a line item on someone else's balance sheet. You are a human being, and your dignity is not negotiable. Here are the warning signs I wish I'd recognized sooner. If these sound familiar, you're not imagining it. You're being used. 1. They only contact you when they need money. No casual calls. No, "how are you" texts. Just requests disguised as emergencies. 2. Your opinions are dismissed as outdated or irrelevant. You're told you don't understand how things work now, even though you built the life they're living off of. 3. You're excluded from decisions about your own assets. They discuss your house, your accounts, your belongings as if they already own them, as if you're just holding them temporarily. 4. When you set boundaries, you're punished. They withdraw affection, give you the silent treatment, or accuse you of being selfish. Boundaries are treated like betrayals. 5. Your needs always come last. Their crises are urgent. Yours can wait. Their comfort matters. Yours is negotiable. 6. You're blamed for their failures. If they overspend, it's because you didn't give them enough. If they fail, it's because you didn't support them properly. Somehow, everything is your fault. 7. Love is transactional. "I love you" is followed by "can I borrow?" Gratitude comes with a price tag. Affection is conditional on continued funding. 8. You feel relief when they leave. Not sadness, not longing, relief. That's the clearest sign of all. If you recognize 4 or more of these signs, you're not in a family. You're in a hostage situation where the ransom is paid in installments. I want to give you permission for something. You don't owe anyone your dignity. Not your children. Not your spouse. Not anyone. Age does not mean you forfeit your right to respect. Being a parent does not obligate you to endless sacrifice with no return. Blood does not require you to endure abuse. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to say enough and mean it. And here's something else, it's never too late. I was 74 years old when I threw those keys into the fountain. 74. Some people told me I was too old to start over, that I should just accept things as they were, that disruption at my age was dangerous. I'm 76 now. In 2 years, I've traveled to 12 countries. I wake up every morning without fear. I eat dinner with friends who chose me, not people obligated to tolerate me. I have a grandson who calls because he wants to, not because he needs something. That's not too old. That's exactly the right time. But I need to warn you about something. I tried to fix things for 10 years. 10 years of hoping, compromising, funding, forgiving. I believed that if I just loved them enough, gave them enough, waited long enough, they would change. They didn't. People don't change because you love them enough. They change because consequences force them to. Stephanie didn't realize what she had until she lost it. And even then, she spent months trying to manipulate her way back, rather than genuinely changing. Ethan changed because he lost everything and had to rebuild from zero. Trevor never changed at all. If you're staying in a toxic situation, hoping your love will eventually transform them, you're not hoping. You're enabling, and you're sacrificing your own life for a fantasy that will never materialize. Change is possible, but it requires pain, consequence, and a willingness to do the work. Most people would rather blame you than change themselves. Don't wait 10 years to learn that lesson. If you're still in it, if you're reading this from your own version of that guest room in Port Royal, here's what I recommend. Document everything. Keep records, emails, texts, financial transactions, conversations. You'll need them later, and your memory will soften the details in ways that aren't helpful. Build your escape plan in secret. I called mine the yellow folder. Get a lawyer. Open a separate bank account they don't know about. Know your legal rights. Understand what you're entitled to and what you're not. Find your people. Arthur, Samuel, Walter. They were my lifeline. You need yours. Real friends. A therapist. A support group. Anyone who sees you as a person, not a resource. And when you're ready, when you've built your foundation, and you know you can stand on your own, throw the keys into the fountain. Walk away. Don't look back. Stephanie. If you're listening to this, I want you to know something. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to save myself. There's a difference. You can still change. Ethan did. He hit rock bottom, worked at McDonald's, saved $1,200 to pay restitution, earned a full scholarship, and rebuilt his life from nothing. He did it because he chose to, not because I begged him to. Change is your choice, not my responsibility. I'll be in Paris if you ever become someone worth knowing. The door isn't locked, but you have to be the one to knock. And you have to come with empty hands and a full heart, not the other way around. One more thing I need to tell you. I stood on my balcony in Paris, the morning coffee warm in my hands, and looked out at the world I'd chosen. The wrought iron railing was cool beneath my palm, painted black, and beginning to rust at the joints. The Eiffel Tower rose in the distance, barely visible through the early morning haze, its iron lattice catching the first light. Below me, the Seine flowed steady, and dark tourist boats already cutting white wakes through the water, even at 7:30 in the morning. To my right, the reconstruction cranes at Notre Dame stood like skeletal sentinels, a reminder that what burns can be rebuilt. The sounds of Paris drifted up from the street church bells from Saint-Sulpice, marking the half-hour, the low murmur of conversation from the café on the corner. Someone practicing accordion badly in an apartment nearby. The smell of fresh bread from Boulangerie Laurent mixed with my coffee, and the faint sweetness of early spring flowers from the planter boxes 3 balconies over. 70 degrees. A light breeze. Perfect. The view from 76 is different than the view from 74. Not because of geography, though that matters, but because of perspective. From the guest room window in Port Royal, I could see the circular driveway, the fountain where I would eventually throw my keys, the cars coming and going, Stephanie's Mercedes, Trevor's Lexus, Ethan's hand-me-down Civic. I watched them leave and return, an endless cycle of people who lived in my house but couldn't see me. I was trapped by a window that only showed me what I was losing. From this balcony, I see possibilities. Every direction I look, there's somewhere I haven't been yet, something I haven't done, someone I haven't met. The view isn't just physical. It's existential. I'm not trapped anymore. People ask what I lost when I walked away from that mansion, that family, that life. They're asking the wrong question. Here's what I gained: peace. I sleep through the night now. No anxiety about what will be demanded of me tomorrow. No dread about the next dinner, the next request, the next humiliation. Just sleep. Deep, dreamless, restorative sleep. Autonomy. Every choice I make is mine. What I eat for breakfast, where I go for dinner, how I spend my money, who I spend my time with. I answer to no one but myself. After a decade of every decision being negotiated, questioned, or overruled, autonomy feels like breathing after drowning. Real relationships. Arthur, Samuel, and Walter show up because they want to, not because they need something. We split the bill. We take turns choosing restaurants. We argue about books and laugh about our mistakes and don't keep score. That's what family is supposed to feel like. Self-respect. I look in the mirror now and recognize the man looking back. For 10 years, I saw someone I didn't respect, a man who funded his own abuse, who accepted cruelty as the price of company, who confused obligation with love. That man is gone. Purpose. I volunteer 3 mornings a week at a literacy program in the 10th arrondissement teaching supply chain management to immigrants starting small businesses. I use what I know to help people build something real. That's worth more than any salary I ever earned. Joy in simple things. Coffee on the balcony. A good book. A walk along the Seine. Dinner with friends. A Tuesday with no plans. I'd forgotten how to enjoy anything that wasn't transactional. Now I remember. Health. My blood pressure is down 40 points. I don't wake up with chest pain anymore. Stress was killing me slowly in that house. Freedom is keeping me alive here. Freedom itself. The mansion was worth $4.2 million. This apartment costs $1,800 a month. But I'm wealthier now than I ever was in Port Royal. Because wealth isn't what you own. It's what you can walk away from without regret. I don't regret leaving. The only thing I regret is waiting so long. Every dinner I endured was a mistake. Every boundary I failed to set was a mistake. Every time I wrote a check to buy affection I would never receive was a mistake. Leaving was the first right thing I'd done in a decade. There have been unexpected blessings. Ethan's redemption. I didn't expect that. I hoped for it the way you hope for rain in a drought, quietly, without much faith. But he did it. He rebuilt himself. And now I have a grandson who calls because he loves me, not because he needs me. Carmen came to visit last spring. She spent 3 days in Paris, and we walked the city together, talking about Eleanor, about regret, about second chances. She's building her own life now, divorced, independent, figuring out who she is outside of Stephanie's orbit. We're friends. Real friends. I'm learning French. At 76, my pronunciation is terrible, and my grammar is worse. But I'm learning. Every Thursday, I sit in a classroom with students half my age and fumble through verb conjugations. It's humbling. It's also exhilarating. There's a woman at church, Anne-Marie, a widow 73 who lost her husband 2 years ago. We have coffee sometimes after Mass. Nothing serious, but the possibility is there, And that's more than I had in Port Royal, where I was too busy funding other people's lives to consider my own. And this journal, I've been writing in it for 2 years. Arthur thinks I should publish it. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe someone needs to hear that it's never too late to choose yourself. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer. It was 8 in the morning Paris time, which meant 2 in the morning in Florida. Wrong number, probably. Or a robocall. But the area code was Naples. I hesitated, then answered. Mr. Foster. I knew the voice immediately. I hadn't heard it in over 2 years, but I knew it. Stephanie. Silence. 5 seconds that felt like an hour. I know I don't have the right to call, she said finally. Her voice was different, smaller, uncertain. Richard gave me the number. He said only for emergencies. Is there an emergency? No. She paused. I wanted you to know something. I waited. I've been sober for 6 months, she said. Therapy twice a week. I'm a manager at Target now. I visit Mom's grave every Sunday. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I wanted you to know I'm trying. I looked out at the Seine, the boats moving slowly downstream. I'm glad to hear that, Stephanie. Ethan told me about the dinners, with your friends, in Paris. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm jealous, but he earned it. I haven't. You're right, I said. You haven't. She made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I'm sorry, Dad, for everything, for the party, for what I said, for how I treated you, for all of it. Sorry doesn't fix everything, I said quietly, but it's a start. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, because I haven't. Silence again. But Stephanie, I continued, keep doing the therapy, keep working, keep changing. Maybe in a few years we can have coffee. Maybe. Really. Maybe. No promises. But I need you to understand something. I gripped the railing. I'm happy now. Happier than I've been in decades. If you come back into my life, you have to add to that happiness, not subtract from it. Can you do that? I don't know, she said honestly. But I want to try. Then keep trying. I'll be here if you make it. I hung up. I set the phone down on the small table beside my coffee cup and looked out at the city again. No anger, no bitterness, no hope really, just neutral. Either way, I was okay. With or without her, I had my life. And that life was good. The view from here is spectacular. Not because Paris is beautiful, though it is. Not because I'm surrounded by friends who chose me, though I am. Not because I have a grandson who calls me grandpa and means it, though I do. The view from here is spectacular because I chose it. I chose this balcony, this city, this life. I chose myself, and that choice was the right one. If you've listened to my story this far, thank you. If it helps even one person throw their keys into the fountain, it was worth telling. Self-respect isn't selfish. It's survival. And sometimes the greatest act of love you can perform is knowing when to walk away. If you're sitting in that guest room right now, planning your escape, building your yellow folder, wondering if you have the strength, you do. You can do it. If you're 74 or 84 or 94 and you think it's too late to start over, it's not. I'm 76 and I've never been more alive. The view from here is spectacular. Come see for yourself. I turned away from the balcony, picked up my coffee cup, and walked back inside to start my day. Free, content, whole.